New on Curiosity Stream. The first rule of espionage: don't get caught.
It's a bullet to the back of the head.
Was he a Russian spy or our spy in Russia? The nuances of the spy game are revealed on Traitor Patriot. And after France's defeat at Dunkirk, Britain raced to defend itself against the Nazi onslaught. Discover the structures used to transform England into an island fortress on the buildings that fought Hitler. Watch now on Curiosity Stream. Annual plans are $20, just $1.67 a month. Visit curiositystream.com.
At In-N-Out, our hamburgers are made with the highest quality ingredients. Made fresh and by hand. Made with a smile to put a smile on your face. Made for special occasions or no occasion at all. Made with gratitude for every customer we get to serve. Most of all, every hamburger, cheeseburger, and double-double is made to order just for you.
That's what our hamburgers are all about.
Consciousness and contact. Conversations with the leading academic researchers and experiencers that will explore the relationship between consciousness, our greater reality, and contact modalities. With the director of the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, here's Rey Hernandez.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rey Hernandez, and I'm your host for Consciousness and the Contact Modalities. And today we have a very, very special guest, my friend Marilynn Hughes, who I consider probably the leading expert on the topic of astral travel. She's written about this topic for at least 40 years. Marilynn can correct me. And she's also has had these astral travel experiences for at least 40 years as well. She has a huge publication that I'll read off in a second. But Marilynn Hughes founded the Out-of-Body Travel Foundation in 2003. Marilynn has experienced, researched, and written and taught about out-of-body travel experiences and mysticism since 1987. And she has appeared on dozens of radio and TV programs to discuss her thousands of out-of-body experiences. I remember a show that she had with the host of the original Coast to Coast, who's now passed away. And that was a remarkable interview that he did with you, because he was just a great interviewer. Marilynn has authored 104, you got that right, 104 books, 40 magazines, and 18 CDs on out-of-body travel experiences and comparative religious mysticism, including her seminal work, The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out-of-body travel and mysticism. I could go on and on and on reading Marilynn's biography, but you catch the drift here. Marilynn really is one of the world's leading authority, if not the leading authority, on out-of-body travel experiences, but in particular, the astral travel experience. So welcome, Marilynn.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Rey.
Well, Marilynn, folks that are listening today are in for a very, very special show because, as you know, a lot has not been written about the out-of-body, specifically the astral travel phenomenon. Okay, there's several academic research studies that have been done about out-of-body experiences, but a lot of people still tend to confuse the terminology. I try to keep the terminology of out-of-body experiences separate from the astral travel experience. And let me explain it. And hopefully you can chime in because you're the expert on this. Because the out-of-body experience is where you pop out of your body, your consciousness, but you're still dealing with an earthly plane. You might see your body underneath you. You might be floating around your house, or your consciousness pops through the roof and you're floating around your neighborhood. I have a friend of mine, he says that he loves it. And he has, yeah, but Ray, I got to be careful with the telephone wires. He always goes above the telephone wires. But but he's been dealing with it for about maybe 4 or 5 years. And I taught him a little bit not to be scared about the phenomenon. And he's finally traveling to Cuba. And he's literally goes there. His consciousness goes there, and he sees the village that he grew up in contemporary times, right now. Mm-hmm. And but you are one of these very, very special individuals that pop out of that realm, okay, which I call, the 5D realm. That's my particular terminology. But you are able to go into these higher astral realms. And that, I think, is where the fun begins, okay? Because you could have a lot of fun on planet Earth and going to Antarctica and seeing what's there, that sort of thing. But when you're going into other dimensions, other realities, and not only going there, but interacting with a diverse array of conscious intelligence, I mean, that really is a very, very different phenomenon. So that's why I use the term out of body to describe, the 5D physical plane experiences and the astral travel experience to discuss the travel to these much, much more complicated higher planes where you are no longer interacting with your physical plane. So, but yet everyone calls it out of body. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about, what I just stated and the way I tend to differentiate these things?
Well, actually, I probably do it in reverse. And the reason for that is because the astral plane actually refers to that fourth dimensional overlap, which is the overlap of the third dimensional reality. So I can see where the confusion would come in terms of looking at it as, okay, the out of body, coming out of your body, looking at your body, being in the out of body state. The reason why I look at it differently is because astral travel then, for me, having experienced thousands of these experiences, is referring to that astral plane travel, which would be then specifically restricted to travel in the astral realm. And the astral realm is that fourth realm, which overlaps the third dimension. And so then the out-of-body travel would then be what happens beyond that fourth realm, so fifth dimensional and above. And that's when you go into those higher dimensional experiences that you're speaking of. So I kind of have it a little bit flipped in that I refer to those higher mystical spheres as the actual out-of-body experiences that go beyond the astral realm. Does that make sense?
Well, I think it's just the terminology because we're describing the same thing.
Right.
What I'm trying to differentiate is lots of people, consciousness pops out of their body, but they're still interacting with the earthly plane. Okay.
Right.
But the marvels of your experience is that you have described experiences that go way beyond that. You're going to other realities.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I want to, so we are talking about the same thing, which is the terminology, there's thousands of different terminologies that people use for these things in terms of planes and hierarchies and dimensions and things of that sort. I really don't get stuck on the terminology because I'm more interested in the actual phenomenon. And so what intrigues me, Marilynn, since I've known you, is I've read a lot of your materials from way back when. 104 books, 18 CDs.
105 as of a couple months ago, but yes.
Okay, 105. So what I want people to understand is the wonders of these astral travel experiences where you're going into other realities, other dimensions, and you're interacting with almost an infinite array of conscious intelligence. People just don't understand. You could have experiences with almost every type of being that people are describing in the UFO contact phenomenon. People are having the same thing when they're astral traveling. Would you say that's fair? Fair statement?
Well, yes, they are experiencing similar things sometimes. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
because people are going into multidimensional realities. And so that's kind of where this is all overlapping.
Okay, so let's start from scratch now. Now that we've got the viewers, piqued to understand that indeed this phenomenon is extremely complex. So take us from the beginning. We're not going to go over in terms of how these things started with you, et cetera, because we really have limited time, and I want the audience member to try to be able to get a better understanding of the phenomenon itself. Okay, so in general, okay, one question that people ask is, do you induce these things, or are they just come naturally, or is it a mixture of both? Are there techniques that you can use to try to induce these astral travel experiences? So if you could address that question.
Well, it is a mixture of both, and sometimes, it happens both ways. All three ways for both, for different people. So some people it's a mixture of both. Some people it's induced, and some people it comes on totally spontaneously. So it really is all three. All three modus. And so you do have that. And, for people who are interested in learning more about that, I do have quite a few books on that. And again, all my books are available for free download at my website at outofbodytravel.org. And we also have put together quite a few films now. And one of the films we have is How to Have an Out-of-Body Experience, and you can watch those at our YouTube channel. And I'd recommend taking a look at that. A lot of people are finding that very helpful. It goes into a lot of depth, as well as the books that we have on the how to have out-of-body experiences. And we have 9 books, and they go in sequence, and each one of them goes into a deeper level of the mystery. So it takes people deeper and deeper and deeper as you go in sequence in those. So yes, there are ways to induce. And, if you want to just go from the very simplest of, the simplest way is you just start with the idea that you're going to create a lot of silence, meditation, prayer, and you're going to have to create these blocks of time, these 3-hour blocks of time that I talk about of meditative silences. And then the books are going to go through a lot of the details of overcoming the blocks to the experience, the various stages of the experience, the vibrational states, and all these things that are going to get you set up to prepare for the experiences. But
well, let's take us with one example. For example, all of a sudden, you try to set the foundation because you've got some time. Maybe it's a long weekend. Mm-hmm. What would you do, and what would happen, and how would you your body feel? What would you sense? And then talk a little bit through that, and then take us through one of your more profound experiences. So people can understand just how profound these experiences are. So give us a stereotype of how physically what happens, how you prepare, and then take us to another time when probably the most important experience that our listeners can hear about.
Okay. Well, first you're going to start with some basic things, like you're going to seek a quiet place. You're going to get rid of as much noise as you possibly can. You're going to do some basic things, things like set aside the self-serving motivations. You're going to have to take a look at your motivations in terms of seeking the will of God alone rather than your own will in this, which is actually quite a big deal in this, because our intention has a great deal to do with whether or not this experience is drawn to us. We have to humble ourselves and approach the path with a serious intention and deep respect. We have to anticipate this need for mystical training. It's not something that is just going to fall upon us. We have to anticipate that we're going to have to practice. It's going to take time, and effort. We're going to have to learn discernment, and we're going to have to be patient. We have to give time to understanding the purpose of the experiences. And, in a nutshell, the purpose of the experience is going to be self-actualization, purification of the soul, the actual purpose of the spiritual journey in this lifetime, self-actualization, the movement forward of our spiritual journey. We have to anticipate that there will be periods that are very dry where nothing happens, and we have to endure and continue forward. We have to go forward with the idea that we are going to utilize this gift when it comes to us with an attitude of service. We approach it with kind of a prayerful fervor. We examine our conscience. Then, there's quite a bit that goes into quite a lot of these things. We go into examining our conscience with, the virtues and the vices in our life. These are important parts of this, because this is how we actually, the idea of going through this kind of like life review with ourselves is actually what energizes and brings towards us this spiritual experience. It brings it towards us. So let me see here. What else?
So Marilynn, if I can sort of summarize,
sure,
it's an experience of self-reflection, of preparation, of spirituality, whereas if you're going to be communicating with your maker, and humbleness, you have to see it as if you're going to be communicating with source. And so you have to prepare yourself for that. Is that like an abbreviation of what you just said?
Yes, exactly. Yes, and as you're doing that, you're detaching yourself from the things of the world. You're getting, almost think of this like the path of a monk in a certain sense. The life of a monk in the world, because that's what we are. Thinking in terms of how we would do that, and so countering then, what you see in yourself, those vices with virtuous acts, how you would counter those, contemplating, renouncing the inferior acts in your life as to how you might embrace superior acts, contemplating remorse and true contrition. And then when you do that, you have to then think about how energy follows course. So energy will follow your actions. The more work you do towards virtue, the more energy will of itself amend you to a higher vibration. That's the law of eternal energy, and that exercises the soul to the next level. And so then as you're doing that, you're energizing this process that's going to bring these experiences towards you. And so
it's, I guess, what another added ingredient that you mentioned, that is like you're undergoing a self-reflective life review. It's like you're going to confession. You're trying to review the things that you need to work on. Similar to like a life review is showing you all of these things. So it's like again, going back to what I said earlier, it's like you're getting ready to prepare to meet your maker, and have communication with your maker.
Well, yes, and you see, these experiences provide us with a window into eternity. And so what we're doing is we're energizing that window towards us. Because, as we are meditating, we're listening to God. As we're praying, we're supplicating God. We're asking God to hear us, to answer our prayers, and asking Him to show us. And it is these experiences, when they come, they begin to open our eyes, so to speak, to what it is that we need to see. And so this is how we prepare ourselves for that which is to come in the out-of-body experience.
Okay. Now, let me just clarify for the audience members is that what Marilynn just described It's been described in a lot of quote unquote religious literature of different monks of all philosophical faiths. Even a lot of the canonized saints, they would go into these deep states of meditation, of prayer, and they would induce these altered states of consciousness where they'd be getting messages, and there was two-way communication. So this is not something that's rare. This is something that's been discussed, from the dawn of mankind. Even in the Indian tradition, Patanjali wrote a very famous book about meditation. He was the one that really popularized the phenomenon, and it's very, very similar to what Marilynn is saying. So there's a long history of communicating with source. And there's different formats, different ways of doing it, but they all have these basic similarities. But I'm sure you know all of this, Marilynn, because you've written books about those.
Yes. And what happens, when somebody starts energizing these processes, and as you talk about this is the way of the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics from throughout all religions and all time and all all tribes and cultures, how the mystics found these practices that came to them, and this is what then starts happening. They start having these interim glimpses, which happens before they start experiencing astral projection. They start seeing colors. So they start seeing things like purples or greens or white lights as their eyes are closed. And this is something that a lot of people will start reporting as they start opening up. They begin to become aware of light orbs in the room. They start becoming aware of presences. They start becoming aware of frequency shifts that they may hear or experience in a room. They hear changes in the tone of the room. And these are signs that the experience is getting closer to them.
Yeah.
A lot of people will realize that, oh no, it's coming closer to me.
Well,
you know what I mean?
What you're describing, Marilynn, in many ways is that in the very beginning of hallucinogenic journeys, when people take ayahuasca or DMT or a magic mushroom, psilocybin, all of a sudden they start seeing, the first stage is they're seeing colors, they're seeing geometric formations, they're hearing, as you said, different types of sounds. Things are starting to slowly change around them. So when you were telling me all of this, I'm just thinking the very beginnings of a psychedelic experience.
Yes, what's interesting about that, though, is that what this shows us and tells us is that people can actually generate these experiences naturally. And isn't that interesting? But we've seen throughout history that, these mystical experiences have been brought on through, things like ayahuasca and other types of substances. But the mystics have also been able to bring it about through natural means as well. And so there is this means, this way that the mystics have found throughout time where we can naturally cultivate within our own consciousness to open it up in a very subtle, very patient way where this happens in and of itself, where it doesn't require any foreign, substances.
Correct. But what I wanted to add was that there's this whole tradition of shamanic traditions that all ancient cultures had. And part of that journey, especially of the shaman, is that they would also add to what you're talking about, their natural ability to go out of their body and communicate with source. They would augment that with natural, medication. And that's where, this whole concept of shamanic journeys has comes in, and a lot of indigenous cultures might not use these medications, but they might, for example, be dancing until they're totally exhausted, and that
Right.
induces an altered state of consciousness. So there's different ways of inducing this altered state of consciousness. But what you're telling us is that that these traditions, you don't need to be, fasting, for days. You don't need to be dancing until you drop dead. You don't need to be taking ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, but that there are techniques that every human can learn to try to induce these altered states of consciousness where you can communicate with source and do these astral travels. Is that correct?
Yeah, sort of. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm definitely not knocking fasting or even any of those practices
Yeah.
because I definitely feel, I mean, just the very fact that these plants and things were put on the earth tells us something, right? You know what I mean? The fact that they exist tells us that they definitely serve a purpose. And I like the way that you use the word augment, because I think that they serve a purpose in that way, to augment and have throughout history in the shamanic cultures, to augment the experiences. And obviously, too, the fasting, the prayer, the meditation, all these things are used to augment
Yes.
the experience. And all these practices that we engage in are used to augment it. And so it's not to set aside any of those things, but to allow us to realize that they all kind of work part and parcel in this process. If that makes sense.
Sure. I apologize for breaking off from what you were telling us, but I thought it was important to bring that in. That,
Sure, absolutely.
yeah. Now, take us through. You started off with some of the physical sensations, and if you could continue with that through, the point where you're actually are breaking outside of this human plane, this human reality.
So then, so people will then go through, when they're preparing to leave form, you're going to awaken from sleep knowing things are happening, but you don't remember what they are. You recall things are happening, but you can't remember what they are. They emerge in their own time, which is as it should be. And then things are happening, subconscious things are being implanted in your sleep. Your dream activity increases, your lucidity increases, your psychic gifts start emerging or become more advanced. You experience semi-conscious states occurring during your dream states, and then you're going to start to hear and feel the buzzing sounds, the roaring sounds, and what those are, for those who might not be familiar, these are the sounds and feelings of the vibrational state as it is beginning to emerge within a soul. The roaring sounds are the sounds of the astral plane, and then you're going to go. We could talk about, there are blocks and fears to the experience, but we'll pass over some of that and move into what you have as you start going out. So when you start going out, you're going to hear the loud roaring sounds, and those are the sounds of the astral plane, because the astral plane itself is of a higher vibration than the physical. And so you hear this loud, like a jet engine sound, and then you are going to enter into the vibrational state, which feels like your body is just vibrating at this really, really high rate of speed. And that's because the vibration of your spirit is so much higher than that of your body. And it is so overwhelmingly powerful that when you enter into that vibrational state, you will have no doubt that you have done so. It's one of these things. And so when you do that, you're going to merge those states and then link to the mind of God. And when that happens, you experience a couple of things. One, you generally experience that unconditional love of God that people talk about, which is so overwhelming, that unbelievable love that people speak about.
Similar to a near-death experience, because
very much so.
That's the number one topic that NDE experiencers mention overwhelmingly. It's
And
all of a sudden,
that's the
yes,
transformational thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
When
that's
into
what
that, could you
changes
talk
everything.
because a lot of people don't understand that it's also in these astral travel experiences.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
this universal love that they feel that they're totally embraced by it. Again, a lot of people don't know much about astral travel experiences, Marilyn. So, but break it down for us, okay? Because
Okay. Yeah.
for
So
the
when you
vast majority of people, this is the first time they're hearing it.
Okay, yeah. So when you enter into that unconditional love of God, the reason why that's so important is because that is the first time that people are understanding that love powers everything. That this love of God, first of all, that they are completely and overwhelmingly loved by God just as they are, and that everyone is overwhelmingly and completely loved just as they are. And this is the transformational thing.
Well,
This
let me
is
just
it.
interrupt you here for a second because a lot of people say, this woman is all super religious about God and love and all this and that. What the hell is she talking about? We're talking about astral travel experiences. But let me just remind the audience members here is that all of the NDE literature, even the academic literature by Dr. Kenneth Ring, Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Raymond Moody, one of the co-editors of our book, Dr. Jeffrey Long, et cetera, et cetera. All these people say that when individuals return from an NDE, the most important concept that they are told is that, look, it's not what religion you are, how much money you have, et cetera, et cetera. The most important concept is that we need to learn how to love each other. But yet Raymond Moody told me a day doesn't go by where he doesn't feel like strangling somebody. And what he meant by that,
And I love it that you shared that because, boy, I
yeah,
love it that you shared that.
yeah, it's not that he wants to actually strangle somebody, but what he was conveying to me is says, look, like the vast majority of these NDE experiences are told about the concept of love, that we need to learn how to love. But damn, it's the most difficult concept to master. Isn't that true?
It's so hard for us as humans to actually learn how to apply it in our day-to-day lives. That's the thing. And I love it that you shared that he said that because I can second that motion that it's so easy to experience it and so hard to apply it. And I'd like to just add to what you said. It's not that we're told it. It's that we experience it. We are completely enveloped in it. When we are in that state, in that out-of-body travel state, we are enveloped in the love of God. We are literally completely enveloped, embodied in it. We know it so completely. There is no question of what it is and how complete and total it is. And it is so beyond words.
Yeah, it's important that you stated that, Marilyn, because what you just said is exactly what these NDE experiencers are saying. They're totally enveloped it. Some are actually told these things, but for many, many people, it's you come out of that experience knowing it,
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you are enveloped in it, it becomes like a part of your molecular structure. You are changed by it. And another thing that happens as well, and I'm not sure if everyone who has the out-of-body experience has it the first time or the second time, but eventually, or the near-death experience has it the first time or the second time, but a great many people have this, where it's not just the unconditional love of God. You also have this experience of all the mysteries of the universe in that moment. You understand.
Exactly. That's another key concept that not only with NDE experiences, but also UFO contact experiencers, when they're taken to these other realities. Edgar Mitchell is a prime example. Edgar Mitchell was coming back from the moon all of a sudden he had an experience. He finally found out that it's called a samadhi experience, but it was an experience where he knew everything, that we're all interconnected. There's no difference between myself and any grain of sand in the universe. And he had universal knowledge, but he said just as quickly as it came in, it went out,
Oh, and I love that you mentioned that part of it too, the interconnectedness with all life, because you feel that too, that oneness with all life and all existence, and all molecules. You're aware of, it's not just every human being or every life. It's this, that you are one with all particles. It's,
and that's why, Marilyn, when a lot of these mystics say, when you're hurting someone else, when you have war, for example, and you're killing someone, you're killing part of you,
Yes. There is just this, it's just such a beautiful, profound, and amazing experience. And I love that Dr. Edgar Mitchell talked about how just as quickly then it pulls away. Yeah. And it's so, you're just so, when it's pulling away, you're like, no, please don't go away.
Yeah, a lot of people that have NDEs say the same thing. I have a very good friend who's a medical doctor, and he does astral travel experiences since he was, 8 years old. Okay, and this man is a genius, but he spent literally 2 years out of his body because he didn't go to school during that time. He just took time off before he started medical school. He was too young because he was one of these, child prodigy types. Okay, and this was about maybe in 2013 when I first met him. He told me of an experience that he had, and he says, Ray, I had an experience where I knew everything. Okay, I knew everything, and for the rest of my life, I've been trying to figure it out. Try to reduplicate what he was taught.
Yes.
And yet, you're saying yes. It's like same thing has happened to you as well.
Yes. And it's interesting because I've had it many times, and then it's like you are always trying to go. You want to go recapture it because you're like, okay, I want to go back and I want to go further. I want to go further and I want to understand it more. Yeah. I want to bring more of it back, because there's always this sense of, I want to bring more of that heaven and bring it back to earth, And
I've interrupted you so many times. You haven't even taken us through the progression. So,
that's okay.
But I needed to stop because each of these topics are, we could spend a whole show on each one. But
I think these additions have been really great. So I'm really appreciative of these additions.
Okay, so all of a sudden you now mentioning that all of a sudden you break out. Okay.
Yes.
Tell me about that experience of breaking out.
Well, there's different ways that people break out, and I don't know if I should go into those details, but some people will roll out of their body, some people will fall out of their body, some people will just lift up or lift out. And then there's this other phenomenon that does occur at different times of vibrational raisings, which occur at this point where you actually are taken through this process where, you'll have angels that will appear and they will actually raise your vibration while you're at this juncture. And the reason for that is because as you're progressing in the out-of-body experience, your vibrations need to be taken up so that you can be taken to higher and higher forms of different multidimensional travel. And so I'll just throw that in there. So this would be the time oftentimes where those would occur. But so in a typical experience, you're going to roll, lift, or will yourself out of your body. And then as you're out, one of the things that you then try to often adjust to is that your senses kind of shift. So, your senses are often going to shift to like a consciousness origination. So your senses, your eyesight, your hearing.
Well, let me break you right there because this is a question that I have and a lot of people have as well. Okay. Because some people say, and I don't know if this is true or false or not, that you literally bring all of your physical senses from your 3D reality out. Okay, I haven't met too many people that actually smell, in an astral travel realm, but clearly people see, people can touch, people can hear. So take us through these senses, these five senses. How do they work in the astral travel realm experience?
Well, what I experienced was you do take your senses with you, but they change. So like you have to adjust to them originating from your consciousness rather than like they're not necessarily like two eyes or two ears. They're coming from your entire consciousness, or your hearing is coming from your entire consciousness. And so you are oftentimes like readjusting to this different form of sight, this different form of hearing. And sometimes that would throw me off in the beginning. Even like for instance, other things like movement. You would actually try to start walking, and you'd have to stop trying to walk and start thinking, moving forward, because you're in a consciousness rather than feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
No, exactly what you're saying. And again, I mean, I could jump off on so many tangents here. A lot of people have described an NDE and also the astral travel experiences. Like, for example, in an NDE, people see these people at a distance. It's like a large group of people. So you're looking at them, and all of a sudden you're thinking, right? Boy,
Yep.
I wonder what they look like. They appear to have some beautiful, robes and stuff like that. And boom, you're right there. Okay. So again,
It's all thinking oriented.
Yes, that's what a lot of people don't understand, Marilynn, is that these similarities of these consciousness-based experiences are so similar. Okay, so could you take us through this whole aspect? I mean, we can get the whole show just on that, where you think of something and boom, it's right there.
Well, yeah, and like you mentioned your friend who goes to Cuba. So you think of Cuba and you will literally be there in an instant, because whatever you think of, you will be there. Like, for instance, I would think of my friend who was in Texas, and I would be there because, literally you travel at the speed of thought, you know. So you're going to travel to whoever you think of or whatever you think of, you're going to create, because thoughts are things in the astral plane. So you will create them. So if you think of, let's say you think of a pen, it's going to appear in your hand. You know what I mean? If you do see a group of people, you will immediately, I want to see what they're talking about, you'll probably just be right there and hearing what they're saying and joining right in. Absolutely. If you're thinking of your childhood, you will most likely be taken right back there to that period of time, because time is not a continuum over there. It is. It operates in timelessness. So
I have a friend, Preston Dennett. You might have heard his name before.
Oh yeah, I know Preston. Yeah,
he's a major astral travel experiences, and he goes out of his body and he yells out, "Mama, where are you, Mama?" Boom, his mother shows up.
Yes.
And he begins interacting with her at an astral, travel realm.
Oh yes, and that can happen too. And the only sometimes there are barriers in place sometimes with deceased relatives, just based on what they are doing in terms of their own journey in the afterlife, because there are sometimes things that we have to go through, or they have to go through. There can be periods where they're not allowed to interact with us because of something they're undergoing. And then there are periods where they're allowed to have contact with us more frequently. And so it's just like that. But yes, you can absolutely have things like that happen.
Well, let's break off again, because I find all these topics, as you could tell, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And we can jump into so many tangents. because it's not every day that you get to talk to a, one of the world's, if not the world's, major astral travel experiencers. Let's talk about now the deceased. Okay.
Okay.
What are the deceased? And give, even if it's a 15-minute overview, what happens when we die, and what happens to your soul or your spirit, after we pass away.
Well, that is a lengthy discussion.
But
It's
it's 9:15. Take me all the way through 9:30 because this is a heavy-duty topic, Marilynn, as you know.
Well, it can be very varied for a lot of souls. And, the afterlife journey, we have literally an infinite number of heavens, an infinite number of purgatorial realms, which are purification realms, and an infinite...
Repeat that again, because people think of heaven as that you're that pig being barbecued, over and over again. You have all these devils stabbing you to death, but you're saying now it's something different now. Could you elaborate on that? What was the word that you used again?
You mean purgatory? They think of that?
Yes, but it's
Okay.
like a realm where it's like a recovery realm. What was the term that you used? I forgot.
Purification?
Purification. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about what that is and what is this? Yeah.
Yeah. It's more of a purification space, and where people go, and this is actually where most of us end up is in the purification realms. This is where most of us will have to go before we can go to the higher realms in the afterlife spheres. And there's also an infinite number of the lower realms, the hell realms. So really, there are
and you've been there, and you've been to many of them.
I've been to so many hundreds of them. Okay. One of the jobs that I do have in the mystical spheres is helping souls go through the afterlife experience. And so I've literally spent thousands of hours helping souls go through the afterlife experience. And so we'll talk about the purification realms, the purgatorial experience. So I'd say probably the most popular of the purification realms are the chaos spheres. And, when I explain this, I think most people will not be so surprised. So the chaos realms are these realms, and there's there's more than one, there's not just one. These are these realms where there's a lot of noise. And they are these realms where people come into them. They're almost like carnivals in a certain sense, where there's just a lot of noise. A lot of people are circling around, and they're just kind of confused, and they're looking for things to fulfill their senses. It's kind of like a lot of, think about what we do on Earth, honestly. What do you think that the majority of humankind does on Earth, where we're just trying to fulfill our senses with meaningless things that are noisy, pointless, and loud. And that's what you find in the chaos realms. And so ironically, the chaos realms are the most populated of the purgatorial spheres. And I've actually spent probably most of my time in terms of souls in purgatory in chaos realms, helping souls to be liberated from those spheres, because that's where a lot of souls end up. Those are the most populated and the most noisy, and to be honest with you, realms that I really dislike among the most, just because they're so noisy.
Now, Marilynn, why do people are placed there? Because I'm assuming it's not their decision, to go there.
Well, ironically, yes, it is. Now, this is what. Okay. But this is where we all have to actually do a little bit of self-reflection. Emanuel Swedenborg was mystic in the, I believe, the 16th century. I have trouble with these numbers. It's 15th or 16th century. He wrote a book called Heaven and Hell, and it's a really great masterpiece. He spoke a lot about this, about the compatibility of souls and how we end up where we're compatible. And this is one of the things that I've seen a lot of in my own experiences, where we go where we're compatible. And this is what happens is we go where we spend the most of our time. And so what happens is we end up, where do we spend most of our time? Where is our time and treasure spent on earth? And so let's reflect on that. And so exactly what I was just explaining, what do we see a lot of people, a lot of humankind spending their time on earth doing? Let's think about this, because we're not talking about people who are spending a lot of time in spiritual pursuits here. We're talking about people who probably would not listen to this show, for instance. We're talking about people who are very materialistic, who are probably avoiding spiritual conversation at all costs, who are very involved in the material world, in noisy things, in things that are intended to distract them from anything of substance, and who in the afterlife are going to exactly the thing that they have been attracted to during their entire life. Loud things, noisy things, distractions, chaos. You see? Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it's. I'm reminded of, I guess, these cartoons when you're a little kid, like Gluttony, and they'll have like someone pigging out, and materialism, and someone just with a whole huge bag of coins, gold coins, and it's like, okay, you want that? Here, you got it. Like in the afterlife.
Yes. And, so it really can be that simple, where we see these things. And, we see that too, like, I wrote about one of the hell realms that I visited was called Muddy Flats, and it was a hell realm for vanity and greed. And it's among the similar things. And this was for souls who were addicted to vanity and greed. It's really quite straightforward.
Yeah. It seems like it's like a realm for those people that are just stuck in their materialism.
Yes.
But they don't have to be there all the time, right? Is that correct?
Well, they are when they first cross over. But what happens is, like, for instance, what I was called in to do, and souls like myself, of which there are many, we're called in to assist these souls in helping to break that trance, so to speak. We go in and we're helping them to wake up, so to speak, to wake up from this delusion, this distraction that's held their attention, to help them to take a step forward, so that they can leave that circular pattern of chaos and take a step forward and out of that realm, so they can take a step higher. And that's how we start the movement of evolution of these souls in the afterlife and forward. And so what you see is a continual progression in the afterlife. So people will go through a progression of different levels. And there are so many different possibilities in the afterlife. And, if you read my books, you'll see that you'll go through quite a bit. There's a particular book I wrote specifically about an afterlife journey. It's called The Limb of the Redemption, and it goes through some of this afterlife journey of a soul and shows how some of this works.
I remember speaking with quite a few people that are, major astral travel experiencers, especially this woman who is at your level, but she's had everything in the kitchen sink, in terms of seeing the physically deceased people living with her, for many, many, many years, tons of UFO related experiences. In 3 minutes, she told me about my wife, my daughter, and my father. That my father used to raise canaries, that my daughter's going to be a medical doctor, that my wife had a major medical illness, but now she's well, and she told me all the details about it, and she did it all in 3 minutes. It was like a minute for each one, because I was doubting her, because it was just too much that what she was telling me. We were filming her for 2 days, and so she's going to be in our book, featured in our book. But anyway, she told me that she spent a lot of times out of body finding, she called them lost souls.
Yes.
And bringing them up to higher planes to source,
Yes.
And so what you're telling us is basically the same thing, right?
Well, lost souls are a different thing.
Yeah.
But yes, lost souls are souls that are actually lost after death, and then they are also handled. They're handled differently, where they're actually caught between realms, between death and the next life, where they actually have trouble because they haven't been able to bring their vibration up well enough where they can actually see their guardian angels. And so you're actually assisting them in raising their vibration enough so that they can see their guardian angels and accept the assistance to rise up and get the help they need to go to the next level and actually leave this plane. And, a lot of souls often end up being, the ghosts.
Yeah.
And that's part of the way they end up getting trapped here, is because they have trouble. They get, a lot of times they have a sudden death, or they don't, for whatever reason, they don't raise their vibration enough to rise up to receive the help from the higher planes, and they need that uplift to rise up and go reach the light.
A question, Marilynn. Have you interacted with these beings, these deceased, assuming the deceased beings that are tormenting homes as poltergeist activities? These souls that wish to remain on the earthly plane. Have you interacted with any individuals, any spirits like that?
I have. Ironically, that was part of my. I had to go through that with the rites of passage in order to pass through some of the initiations into the mysteries as I was going through that.
So
yes.
Tell us just a very quick example of that, of what happened.
Well, this was a while back, so it's hard to remember the exact details. But this was a couple of souls that were poltergeisting a particular house, and I had to remove them from that house because poltergeists are a unique manifestation that is a violation of eternal law. So when they're at that level, it is uniquely. It's a different level because it's a violation of eternal law, and so it's handled differently. In a lot of cases with a ghost, if it's just a wandering lost soul, this is something that's handled like what you were talking about just a moment ago. These are people who are in more like people who have died who need assistance. If they're not causing harm, they need help. But when you have people who have become damaging, harmful, evil spirits who are actually causing harm, they're violating eternal law, and they are literally under judgment. And so in this case, they had to be extricated and actually taken to a lower sphere. So I had to go in, and in order to move on to the next level of my own training, I had to participate and assist in removing them from that house and getting them into this lower sphere and cleansing that place, the house that they had harbored and caused harm to, and then get them into this place where they would no longer be able to cause harm, and have them safely put away, so to speak.
But this is not permanent. This is just a temporary realm for them to be able to ascend.
Well, this would be where they were going to be for whatever period of time would be deemed by God. It wouldn't be determined by myself, so to speak.
Okay, so you weren't putting them in the gates of hell and knocking the door, Marilynn, right?
No, not me. That would not be for me to judge. It would
Okay.
be, I was being told where they needed to be for now.
Okay,
You know what I
gotcha,
mean?
gotcha. And who was giving you who told you these things?
At the time, it was Saint Michael the Archangel,
Okay.
and he
And
was training me. You know, it wasn't like he couldn't do it himself. He was training me though, so he was
okay.
having me assist only because he was training me, not because he couldn't have done it himself. You know what I mean?
Sure. Now, give us a breakdown. Now, I interrupted you one more time again, because a lot of people have these questions about what is the afterlife. You know, what is the
Right.
human soul? You know, what happens when we die? Because a lot of people have literally these thousands of stories via NDEs, but there's very little stories that are told about astral travel experiences, and I find them just as informative and just as fascinating, but those stories are just not out there. So tell us a little bit about it. You know, what is the afterlife? What is the human soul?
Well, you know, the human soul continues. You know, we continue to evolve after we die. This is just one step in the journey. So we cross over, and whatever level that we are at the time of our death, we continue forward from that point. And so whatever that point is, you know, there are literally there are so many different, as many different things that you can imagine that people can do on Earth. You know what I mean? There are an infinite number of possibilities of things that we can do in the universe, because first of all, there's the galactic heavens, which is the beautiful, beautiful heaven that is within the galactic heavens. It's this beautiful heavenly space where the extraterrestrials and the human souls all reside in a heavenly sphere together. And it's beautiful. But
Okay,
beyond,
let's talk. Oh my goodness, you're raising so many questions that I need to stop you there, Marilyn. You said the extraterrestrial and the human souls reside in the same plane. Okay, a
yes.
lot of people would say, you know, the extraterrestrials, they're coming from another planet. You know, they're physical beings. They're riding these physical spaceships. You know, what would be your response to that statement?
I would say, yeah, so.
But now you're saying that they're also multidimensional. Is that correct?
They're multidimensional. And you know what is really neat about it is that when you go into heaven per se, because remember, there's an infinite number of heavens, but the heaven, you know, the heaven, which is the heaven of heavens, when you go there and you wake up there and you're like, oh my gosh, the extraterrestrials are here too.
Okay.
And it
I mean,
feels
this is like
completely natural that they are here.
but is it a deceased
Yeah, they're
extraterrestrial?
all there with us. They're all there with us.
It's not a living extraterrestrial. These are
No, they're
deceased.
just there with us. They're just there with us. You know, so
Okay.
what does this tell us? It tells us that we are this multidimensional reality, and we are all one. And you know, we have this very, very small perception of existence. You know, because heaven is not as small as we make it either. So, you know, we're thinking, okay, heaven is just going to consist of us. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't. It consists of all of us. And all of us is not just who lives on this world. It consists of all of God's worlds.
Okay. So ETs also die and they also go to heaven. Is that what you're basically telling us?
Yes, but that doesn't exclude the fact that there are also multidimensional extraterrestrials and extraterrestrials who are not physical, who also reside in these mystical spheres, who are not physical, who don't die in that way. So, you know.
Okay, it's like the way we think of angels, for example.
Well, yes, but no, because they're not angels. They're still extraterrestrials, you see. So
Okay. It's
see?
like we have Michael, who is people
An
consider
archangel.
an archangel, okay?
Yes.
But he's in a human form. So even for the what we consider extraterrestrials, they have their own form of
Yes. You see, there are so many different, there are so many different worlds. You see, there are different extraterrestrials that live in a different way. So there are extraterrestrials who are physical, and these are the ones that will probably, they are mortal and they will die like we do, and then have a spiritual body in a heavenly form like we will. But there are also extraterrestrials who aren't physical. They are already a much higher form of life than we are. And they live on these planets in the mystical spheres. And they are so beautiful and so far beyond what we are. And they are, they already live and exist in this unconditionally loving, love and light, almost utopian world. It's so far beyond what we are capable of actually comprehending. I'd like to think that Dr. Edgar Mitchell is actually studying them now, because I think he probably is, because that's the type of person that he is, and he probably is, but there are these civilizations, and they're not physical, and they exist. And see, this is where we get so caught up and stuck, is because we want to classify them in a way that works within our physical construct. And what we learn very quickly through the out-of-body experiences, and when we start traveling so multidimensionally, is that there is so much more than what we know here in the physical world. And this is some of it.
Well, I mean, we could be here multiple weeks talking.
We could.
But let's talk another topic, reincarnation, okay?
Sure.
So many traditions talk about reincarnation, whether it's the Vedic tradition, Buddhism, Taoism, Greek philosophical traditions, Roman philosophical traditions, even the Jewish tradition of Kabbalism has their incorporates the topic of reincarnation. And then Dr. Ian Stevenson dedicated basically 40 years of his life, 30 years of his life to studying reincarnation. And Dr. Jim Tucker, who followed him at the University of Virginia, continues with that for like over 30 years. So there's been lots of discussion of the topic of reincarnation. It's Ian Stevenson published this 2-volume book. It was 2,500 pages, huge, meticulously documented about reincarnation. So I'm sure you have something very, very important to tell us about the topic of reincarnation. Is it true or is it not?
Well, my experience has shown it to be very true and very relevant to our spiritual journey here. In my, and in fact, one of the things I have been repeatedly shown is that the mystery of reincarnation is a pivotal point in my own particular purpose and mission here, is that it's really important for us to uncover the karmic purpose, the karmic reason why we are here. Because what we do as human beings is we are very habitual creatures. We repeat the same mistakes over and over again, lifetime after lifetime. And we have a tendency to then circle over and over again, circle back. We have very repetitive life streams. And then we literally end up doing the same thing over and over again. And a big part of the work in the Mysteries of the Redemption is to help people to try to uncover what is the big karmic pattern that you need to uncover, that you need to purify, so that you can actually identify, overcome it this time, so that you can make that big leap and literally stop that cycle and go on to the next phase of spiritual development this time around, and stop the cycle.
Let's go back a little bit, Marilynn. Okay.
Okay.
What is the purpose of reincarnation? because there's a lot of people that talk about, they've had, whatever, 1,000 lives, 500 lives, whatever it might be. We all know that time is not linear. Okay, so that's another area of discussion. The linearity of reincarnation. How does that work? But let's talk about now the purpose of reincarnation.
It is to uncover a fundamental misunderstanding within the soul about something regarding a karmic misunderstanding regarding love or destiny, and to transform it to the eternal understanding of love or destiny and change it so that the soul is ready to take the next leap to the next step in the spiritual evolution of the soul. We get stuck on these karmic understandings of love and the purpose of life, and we have to transform it to an eternal understanding of love and destiny so that we can move on to, as Paramahamsa Yogananda would talk about, moving on to the astral planets, which is the next step. I would call it the Pure Lands. He would call it the astral planets. We're talking about the same thing. It's where we move on to the next step in the evolution of the soul.
Is it, Marilynn, that just like these individuals are stuck in this materialist realms of gluttony, of money and noise and physicality?
Yeah, a lot of it can really go back to the seven deadly sins.
Yeah, is it really that reincarnation is that we need to purify ourselves of all of these seven deadly sins? Is that sort of like a way of looking at it?
It really is that simple. Ironically, a lot of what I write about is, mystical theology. And mystical theology, in a nutshell, is transforming the seven deadly sins into the seven virtues. And that really is the purpose of the purification of the soul. As we do this, we are altering our path. We did a film called The Grand Phases of the Soul. And this outlines the great phases of purification, discrimination, where we are then able to get that focus forward. This is how the great prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics were able to then take the next leap forward. This is where the ancient sacred texts come in. We followed the grand phases of the soul with the film The Stairway from Earth to Heaven, which was actually based on, a series of visions that I had in the out-of-body travel state, where I kept being shown how the ancient sacred texts created this beautiful staircase. The actual books were created this staircase from earth to heaven, because each of these ancient sacred texts is like the final great golden words of all of those great prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics. Their last words before leaving this realm for the last time. This is what they figured out. The secret, the final words, their secret to leaving this realm. What we need to know to actually finish here, And so we forget these things are in plain sight, these ancient texts that tell us what is the great mystery of this earthly realm. What do we need to know to finish this journey here? And that's what this stairway of these ancient sacred texts was. The reason why it's the stairway from earth to heaven is because they did leave those secrets behind for us, but we often miss it because we don't think about that they did leave those secrets for us to discover. We just don't look for them because we don't think of it, that they're there.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time left, Marilynn, but what I want to do is sort of like, as they say, whet the whistle, whet the appetite of some of the audience members that are out there about a specific experience that you had. Can you tell us a really a high strangeness type of experience that would literally blow people away? Again, we've got maybe 10 minutes for you to mention that.
Sure. Okay. Okay, I'll tell you. I mean, I have so many beautiful experiences,
I know you
but
got to
I'll
pick
tell
one.
you
You got
one.
you got to pick one.
Okay. I'll tell you one that is one of my favorites, and I've had it more than once. So I'll just, I've been there more than once. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it. One of my favorite places to go is the Pure Lands, which is one of the places that we do go when we wrap things up here, when we finish our earthly journey here and we move on to the next step beyond the learning that we have here in the earthly life, is the Pure Lands. For those who are familiar with Buddhism, there's a Pure Lands school of Buddhism. So the first time I went to the Pure Lands, I was picked up by a spaceship, and I was taken on this beautiful craft and taken to this planet. And this planet has 2 suns and 4 moons. And it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. It is just one of the most lush, beautiful places in terms of, having every single beautiful ecosystem on it, in terms of all the most, exquisite colors in the forests, the oceans, the trees, and all those things. But what makes it so spectacular beyond the natural beauty is that you come soaring in, on a tachyon stream, which is, the particles that soar beyond the speed of light. And you come in there, and all the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, ascetics, and masters are residing there. So Avalokiteshvara is floating in the skies. There's all these beautiful Buddhas meditating beneath the trees. The great Old Testament prophets are walking amongst the grasses, just, talking amongst themselves. The Lord is walking with some of the apostles. You have Lao Tzu, Lin Jai, the founder of Zen. You have communing with one another and talking about how they can help the earth. And you come in there and it's just utter bliss. And you come in there and have conversations with different masters on different occasions about different subjects. And the beauty of the place is just so wonderful. And I have this cabin up at the top of a hill. And I've had wonderful conversations with many of the masters there myself. I think that I'll never forget, speaking with Avalokiteshvara there, and her beauty and her grace in talking about her concern for the people of the earth and giving me my, giving me my calling, telling me what I must do as she sends me back to go back and do my work, the work she's sending me to do. The colors, the beauty of the waves, the place is just so beyond beautiful. That's one place.
Yeah, this is like a very emotional experience for you. Marilynn, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Do you believe that that humanity is at a crossroads? That,
yes.
That we are heading towards a path of self-extinction, and that's why a lot of reincarnated souls are being brought down here to see if that can be avoided. Would you agree with that statement?
yes, I do think that we're at a major crossroads, and I do think that it is I do think that we are in a pretty dire turning point right now. I think it could go badly. It could go very badly.
Well, I start off my new book, The Mind of God, exactly with that language, and I quote Edgar Mitchell in that quote, and maybe I could read it to you, and we'll get some departing comments from you.
Sure. Yeah.
Before we close the show here. So let me just pick it up here, because I think these words are extremely important, and these words are exactly what you just said. Of what these mystics told you in that realm. And let me quote Edgar Mitchell. Okay, and this came from a short 2-page article he wrote about spirituality. And what he says is, all of creation must either perish or constantly evolve. There is no other alternative. The need to evolve is upon us once more. Indicators abound that time is running out on modern Homo sapiens. Nature is losing patience with our unsustainable practices. The clarion call is unmistakable. Human beings must evolve or perish. We must swiftly evolve to the next level by eradicating pervasive ignorance regarding who we really are and why we are here, or face the extreme likelihood of mass death and destruction, if not extinction altogether. Humankind's next phase of evolution will be more an evolution in thought, knowledge, spirituality, and consciousness than one involving our biology or psychology or physiology. It will likely be an evolution in consciousness triggered by research involving a dramatic change in perceptions, values, beliefs, attitudes, and a profound resultant shift in human behavior. As a result of this shift, the every man for himself paradigm, fueled by greed, will be supplanted by the all for one and one for all paradigm, fueled by a new spirit of altruism and unity. Quote unquote, Edgar Mitchell.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Couldn't agree with him more that that's what's needed.
Yeah.
I do think that it's questionable whether that is how it will go. And I think that what we see in the mystical spheres is what I would say is cacophony is the word that comes to mind, is that things have not gone as was hoped in the mystical spheres. There was greater hope, and I don't mean to be negative, but I'm just going to be honest, that there is a disappointment in humanity right now, that, all of us need to step up and actually fulfill what Dr. Edgar Mitchell is speaking about. That's what we need to do. That's not what we are doing. It's what we need to do. There's a cacophony in the universal consciousness of humankind right now that is extremely disturbing and very disappointing. And that is part of the reason that actually a lot of the extraterrestrial races have pulled back a bit, actually. It's because of us.
Well, Marilynn, we could have gone on, as I said before, for weeks, because we didn't even discuss 1/1 millionth of a percent of these topics, which are so little talking about and so little understood, Marilynn. I'm sure you can agree to that.
Yeah, there's so much that we could talk about. And I encourage everybody, to remember, my website is outofbodytravel.org, and all my books are available for download.
That's what I was going to say. Repeat that again. Give your actual website and what is available at the website.
It's outofbodytravel.org, and my books are available to download for free. And you can also watch all of our films on the YouTube channel for free. And, there is so much there's so many experiences that it's very, I write so much better about them than I speak. So please read them. They're much easier to follow in the books. And also the films are all available to watch for free as well. Check them out, read them.
Just to let folks know that these are, when you look at that, you'll think, oh, this is all about religion. This is all about New Age, this and that. No, this is all about exactly what I've been focusing on, the relationship between consciousness and the contact modalities, because it's all one phenomenon and they share numerous commonalities. And tonight in our interview, we've been discussing many of these commonalities. So, Marilynn, what I want to be able to do before we sign off is I want to give a brief discussion that on September 1st, the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, which is primarily an academic research institute, which replaced the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. On September 1st, we're going to be publishing 3 books. The first one is titled The Mind of God, and that was written just by myself. And that is the introduction to the 4-book series of A Greater Reality. And that presents the whole theoretical model of the nature of our reality. Again, it's my model, but it's a model based upon everything that we've been discussing today, and the works of near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, astral travel experiences, hallucinogenic journey research, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is meant for the individuals that do not want to read the 2,500 pages of the 4 volumes that we're going to be publishing, or the 105 books that Marilynn wants to read, that Marilynn has published. So get on my on my mailing list. Send me an email to info, I-N-F-O, at agreaterreality.com. Info at agreaterreality.com. And I will send you information of what this monstrosity of a project that I've been working on for the last 5 years is all about. And if you're interested in getting these books, where to get them. So Marilynn, once again, thank you so very much. Everyone, check out outofbodytravel.org. There are literally, tons of free books and materials available that Marilynn has spent over 40 years researching and writing about. So Marilynn Hughes, thank you so very much for a wonderful interview.
Oh, thank you. And just to make mention, I did write a chapter in 2 of those books, A Greater Reality. One in, I'm not sure which volumes, 2 and 3, is it, Ray?
It's going to be in volume 3, and we're going to be publishing volume 3 and 4 on October 1st.
Oh, okay.
And that is an article titled The Progression of Out-of-Body Experiences. I'm not quite sure if there's a second one, Marilynn. Maybe we could, chat.
Yeah, there is that other article as well, that other one that was written, yeah.
Okay, so I need to follow up with you on that. But again, there are many individuals like Marilynn, they're having, lifetimes of out-of-body experiences, and they've written about it. But of all of these individuals, no one has this collection of documentation on it and such a diversity of experiences as Marilynn. And her stuff is free. So go to outofbodytravel.org. Thank you so much, Marilynn.
Thank you, Ray.
New on Curiosity Stream, the first rule of espionage, don't get caught.
It's a bullet to the back of the head.
Was he a Russian spy or our spy in Russia? The nuances of the spy game are revealed on Traitor Patriot. And after France's defeat at Dunkirk, Britain raced to defend itself against the Nazi onslaught. Discover the structures used to transform England into an island fortress on the buildings that fought Hitler. Watch now on Curiosity Stream. Annual plans are $20, just $1.67 a month. Visit curiositystream.com.
Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino this year.
I was only playing for fun, so winning this was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's #1 social casino experience. It's serious fun. With over 80 casino-style games to choose from, you too could win life-changing amounts of cash. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and give them a whirl. That's ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of a winner.